This is the console tier list. Video where we rank. We're gonna put these consoles into tiers. Now, the way this works is all the consoles I have here, I've actually owned these consoles at some point in my life. I'm trying to do these in chronological order as to the time of my ownership. Digging through my memory bank pretty far in here, and not only I'm going to rank them into these tiers, I'm also going to talk about what is the one most memorable game that I played on this console. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about the Sega Master System. A lot of you may not remember this, but Sega did have a system that competed with the original Nintendo back in the day. This console wasn't great. I was really young. I didn't have too much time to play games back then. My aunts and parents just didn't let me. But anyway, if I were to rank this console from based on what I remember, I have to put this in the D tier. It was not a great console. There's only one really memorable game that I can think of on there, which was Shinobi. Other notable games like Outrun, Space Harrier, I remember I had. None of it was super good. Alright, next off, the Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as NES. This is one of the best console I think that's ever made in the history of gaming. Therefore, this has to go up to the A tier. Now, I would say the one most memorable game that I have on there was Final Fantasy 1. Yes, 1. The very original Final Fantasy game. Notable games, Mario games, Zelda games, Metroid. There are just too many to name on this system. Alright, next up, Super Nintendo. To me, the Super Nintendo is one of the greatest gaming console ever created. It solidified the 16-bit era. It was a great successor to the original Nintendo. This has to go up to the S tier to me. As a matter, this console is so good. People are still playing this today. I mean, imagine if people are still buying the classic. I mean, the Super Nintendo is absolutely one of the greatest console ever made. Most memorable game for me, Final Fantasy VI, because it's still considered one of my favorite games of all time. As far as other notable games, you got Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Super Metroid. Oh, it's just so good. Donkey Kong. Anybody remembers Chrono Trigger? Earthbound. These are just too many names, great games to name that came on the Super Nintendo. All right, next up we have the Sega Genesis, competitor to Super Nintendo. Pretty good system at the time. Some may argue it was better than the Super Nintendo at the time, but to me, it was just an average system. I gotta put this in the C tier. I know I might get some hate for this, but that's okay. But this is just my opinion. Most memorable game on this system, I have to say the Street Fighter 2s, because at that time, that was one of the best home port to a very popular arcade fighting game at the time. So, and Sega Genesis did a great job with that. Other notable games, obviously Sonic the Hedgehog. Who can forget that? A lot of you that was around back then, you remember they were the first console that had Mortal Kombat that had actual blood. On the Super Nintendo version, it was like a green sweat. Really weird. Next up, we had the Nintendo Game Boy. This is the original black and white version. I never had the color one. This system really defined the whole entire handheld genre. Now, I'll be honest, handheld for me has never been my top priority. It's just something I enjoy having around, but it's never been like my main console. It's always like a supplemental console. Therefore, I can't put this any higher than a C tier. Most memorable game that I played on there, Tetris. The original Tetris. Enough said. It's just one of the most addicting games ever made. Next up, yes, I had a 3DO. Yes, the 3DO. What an awful system. Absolutely one of the worst product I've ever bought in my entire life. I wish, if I have an F tier, this would go down to the F tier, but I had to put this in the D tier since it's the lowest tier it goes. There's actually less. It's probably like a D minus. If I have to think one game that actually was memorable for me was probably Gex. Many of you may not know what that is. Anyway, forgettable console. Next up, we have the PlayStation 1. PlayStation 1 was so revolutionary at the time. The first console, I don't know if this is the first, but it has the CD-ROM. It was just a great console. This got to go up to the B tier. I just cannot put this on the same level as the original NES. Not at this moment. But it was a great console regardless. So many notable games, a notable memorable game for this console for me. Final Fantasy VII was probably the one most memorable game on here. You also got Metal Gear Solid, Symphony of the Night. Final Fantasy IX was great. Ridge Racer, wow, what a great racing game at the time. Twisted Metal, just a great console, all around console, and it stood the test of time because I think people are still having play on this nowadays. Next up, we had a Nintendo 64. Nintendo 64 was a very, very tough one for me to rank. I have to put this on the same level as the PlayStation 1. So this goes up to the B tier. Most memorable game for me on there was Mario 64. Some other notable games, who could forget GoldenEye, Zelda Ocarina of Time, arguably one of the greatest games of all time. Paper Mario is another great one. But the thing about Nintendo 64 was that it was still using cartridge. When we can tell that PlayStation the CD had really revolutionized the industry at the time in the 90s, and Nintendo still chose to go with the cartridges. It was a strange choice, but we all knew it eventually went away. All right, next up we had the Game Boy Advance. Now, this was... okay, this is really hard for me to do, but I have to put this in the D tier. Simply for the fact that the Game Boy Advance that I had was the original one, and it did not have backlighting. Therefore, I just couldn't see the games. It was so dark that it took all the enjoyment out of the system for me. Luckily, that was the last time Nintendo did something like this for a handheld, so it was not an issue. But this particular one that I had with no backlighting, it was an awful system just because I can't see the games. Now, when I was able to see the games, some of the best games they have some really good games. Notably, the most memorable one for me was Advance War. What a fun strategy game for that time. They had some really good Castlevania games on there, Metroid games. Golden Sun was another very underrated game that was on the Game Boy Advance. Only if I was able to see better. Now, next up we have the Sega Dreamcast. This particular console holds a special place in my heart. I'm going to put this in the S tier. Yes, Sega Dreamcast for me goes up to the S tier. And let me tell you why. The Dreamcast was such a revolutionary console. You gotta remember, this was the first console that introduced online play for console players. It has that, I don't know if you can see in that controller, there's a little hole there. You can insert like a carton, I forgot what's it called. And you can see different things on there that it was so cool at the time. And it was the very first console that I really enjoyed online play with some of my friends. Notably, the most memorable game I had on there was NFL 2K2. The competition, I mean, for that matter, 2K1 was also great too. The competition I've had on that game, and it was so memorable for me. And it's just too bad that Sega just kind of let the Dreamcast die and they kind of went away from the console business. Thanks a lot to the next console we're going to talk about, which is the PlayStation 2. This, to me, this is an A tier. I cannot put it above in the S tier just because, yes, it has a DVD player. I get it. And at that time, DVD players were very expensive. So a console that comes with DVD player was very, very highly sought after. Yes, it was a great console, but I just don't feel like at that time it was as revolutionary for me as the Dreamcast was, or how the Super Nintendo was at the time. Most memorable game for me on there, believe it or not, was Gran Turismo 3. The amount of hours I put in that game was insane. I like that game so much, I ended up buying one of those racing wheel package for it. Those times are crazy. Now we have the Nintendo GameCube. This was a very niche console. When it first came out, I remember. The controller was a little different than a lot of controllers on the market at the time. The look of the console was very, very different. It almost looks like a little lunchbox, like a very small lunchbox with a little handle on there. But the system itself, I think it was a great system. I really do. Was it as good as the NES or the PlayStation 2? No. Therefore, I gotta put it in the B tier. The most memorable game for me on that was Metroid Prime. I played that game late into the night and many nights, and I just found I was very skeptic because Super Metroid was one of my favorite games of all time. So when they changed Metroid Prime to a first-person shooter, I was very skeptic and said, how can they make this work? Boy, did it work. Absolutely, hands down, I believe one of the greatest games, Metroid Prime. And I played it on the GameCube, and it was so memorable. I still remember some of the battles I've had to this day. Other notable games on the GameCube, obviously you got Mario Sunshine. The Zelda Wind Waker game on there was also great. Pikmin, very underrated game. That was actually on the GameCube. And Animal Crossing, people still play that today. It's one of the most popular games right now, and that started on the GameCube. Therefore, the GameCube is not a great system. All right, now we have the OG Xbox. OG Xbox. All right, this may be a little harsh on this, but I had to put this at the bottom here. This was not a great console, in my opinion. It was just, there's only really one memorable game for me, which was Halo. Halo was a great game at the time. I really had fun with it. It was great. Other than that, I just really can't think of too many other games that's really notable for this console. Yeah, Xbox, Microsoft, your first attempt was not a very good one, but you did made up for it in your next console, which is the Xbox 360. This is going up to the A tier, okay? And here's the reason why I think. The Xbox 360, the jump, first of all, this came out before the PlayStation 3. So we were all looking for the new system, and 360 came out. It was very exciting time. The controller is arguably one of the best controllers to this date. But I think a lot of PC players still uses an old Xbox 360 controller. That's how good it is. It had a really cool online factor that I think they kind of started the whole Xbox Live thing on the Xbox 360. Notable games, I would say the one most memorable is BioShock. That started on the 360. They introduced us to the Mass Effect franchise. Halo 3 was another great one. The Gears of War franchise. I remember Rainbow Six on there that I played was awesome, and also the Dark Souls game, the very first Dark Souls game that I played on there. Xbox 360, Microsoft, great job on that console. Next up, we had a Nintendo Wii. This console was, I have to say, one of the most unique console I think I have ever owned. I think in history. The motion control, the nunchuck was also different at the time, but this console was so different at the time. It was so exciting to see something so different in the market at the time. This has to go up into the A tier for me. I know, it's crazy. I'm putting it in the same tier as the NES, PlayStation 2 is in the Xbox 360. The most memorable game for me on there was Twilight Princess, Zelda Twilight Princess. The mechanics of it, using the nunchuck and the controller, it was so well done to me. And Twilight Princess is a great game. So I know there's a GameCube version of the game, but I can't imagine playing in a GameCube with a regular controller. I think the Wii really made it a better game. That's just my personal opinion. Other notable games like Mario Galaxy, Wii Sports, which came with the system. That was a fun game. Skyward Swords, that's another Zelda game on there. That's also great. Nintendo DS with the touchscreen on the bottom, regular screen up top. You got a little stylus. Much better than the Game Boy Advance, just for the fact that the screens are backlit. I have to put this up to the B tier. This is a great handheld made by Nintendo. This is definitely better than the original Game Boy. So this goes above it, that's for sure. Most memorable game on there is probably Zelda Spirit Tracks. That was a really fun game on there using the dual screen technology. The one previous to Phantom Hourglass was great too, but I just like Spirit Tracks a little better because of the storyline. Other notable games such as Animal Crossing that's on there, the new Mario Brothers game for the DS. DS overall, there's a reason why it's one of the I think, if I'm not mistaken, it might be the top selling console of all time if you count handhelds into the calculation. There's a good reason for it. It was a job well done by Nintendo. PlayStation 3. Now, after the success of PlayStation 2, I feel like Sony kind of took it a little easy on the PlayStation 3. I don't know. This system, it's hard for me to rank because I don't think it's as good as PlayStation 2. I don't think it's as bad. I don't think it's on. I don't know. It's not quite a Genesis or the Game Boy. Therefore, this is tough. I guess I could put it on the same level as the original PlayStation, I guess. This console kind of takes us into the next gen, into the 2010s in a way. This is tough. I mean, I almost want to put it down here because I don't know. The PlayStation 1 was so revolutionary when it first came out that I don't, you know what? I'm doing it. PlayStation 3 goes to the C tier. It came out almost a year, I want to say, after the 360, and by that time, I think the 360 was such a success that PlayStation 3 just kind of got overlooked, surprisingly. Most memorable game for me on there, Metal Gear Solid 4. Great game. Lots of cutscenes, but overall it's a great game. I enjoyed the series. But it did introduce us to God of War 3. Another great game for the PlayStation 3. And I played Rock Band on there. That was pretty fun. The Last of Us Uncharted franchise also started on PlayStation 3. But overall, to me, PlayStation 3 just weren't as... They didn't have that oomph factor for me at that time. Next up, we have the Microsoft Xbox One. Xbox One. Such great promise for this console after the 360. You know, this to me, it was the same effect as PlayStation 3. Just did not provide enough oomph for me. The Kinect that it came with when I bought it was an absolute joke. There wasn't too many games that utilizes it well, and it was just kind of taking up space on top of your TV. If I have to think of one very memorable game on there, I gotta probably go with the Ori games, both of them actually. I think the Ori games are probably some of the best Xbox exclusive games that we have. They're just phenomenal. Sunset Overdrive is another good one. Forza Horizon was great. But overall, the Xbox One was not that. It wasn't that exciting for me. And now the PS4, PlayStation 4. This one, great system. I really enjoy what it had to offer. Definitely a step up from PlayStation 3. Sony really made some great progress with this system. Therefore, it's definitely better than PlayStation 3. But was it as revolutionary as these? I have to say no, because it was a good system, but it didn't provide a wow factor as the NES and the PS2 at that time. So this belongs in the B tier. I would say the most memorable game on there is Bloodborne. As a matter of fact, I could probably play that game again. Bloodborne is just one of the greatest games, and it's a PS4 exclusive. I just love that game. Fantastic, all around. Other notable games that's on the PS4: Final Fantasy VII Remake. That was a time exclusive on the PS4. I think it's out on the PC now. God of War on the PS4. That was a great game. Persona 5, Destiny. I actually spent a lot of time playing Destiny when I had the PS4. Metal Gear Solid 5 is another solid game on there. PS4 overall is a great console. And now we're getting to our current gen here, the last four that's remaining. First, we have the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo consoles rarely not deliver. The only one, as you can tell, I've owned just about all their consoles with exception for a few, namely the Wii U. I thought that console just did not work well. But anyway, the Nintendo Switch, they bounced back big time from the Wii U. This is one of the best consoles, I believe, from an innovative side that has ever been made. It was very exciting when it first came out. It had the oomph, but this has got to go up to the A tier. I really want to put it up here. I really do, because I really like the Switch. However, to me, it wasn't quite as innovative as these other two at that time from a historical perspective. All right, I gotta go down to the A tier then. Most memorable game on there for me, Breath of the Wild, hands down. It's just a phenomenal game, phenomenal everything, absolutely fantastic. Other notable games on there, Metroid Dread, Mario Odyssey, Paper Mario. Octopath Traveler was actually a Switch exclusive for a period of time. That's a great game. Highly recommend it. Next up, we have the Xbox Series S. I don't own the Series X. I have the Series S, and this console has been somewhat of a disappointment. It's kind of just collecting dust now, to be honest with you. Yeah, this has to go down to the bottom tier here. Halo Infinite was probably the most memorable game I played on there, but then again, I was playing on my PC, my gaming PC as well. Therefore, it really didn't get used much on there, except for what I want to play on my TV. There's just Microsoft just doesn't have the exclusives that that other like Sony and Nintendo has, and it really puts it behind the 8 ball. Yeah, so this is a miss for me. PS5. Now, the PlayStation 5 to me is an upgraded version of the PlayStation 4. Great graphics, great controllers. Overall, the system itself really delivers on a lot of front. However, I just think it's a better version of PS4 from a graphical standpoint, from a load time standpoint, which is a big thing. And therefore, I think it goes in the same tier. It goes in the B tier. Most memorable game? Well, I'm still playing the game. Elden Ring. I'm playing on PS5. I'm a little disappointed that I'm playing on a PS5 and still I still want periodically get frame rate drops on Elden Ring. It's not horrible, but you know, I would expect this is a PS5. Come on. I mean, maybe I should have got it on my PC, but whatever. It's on the PS5. Other notable games: Demon's Souls, Gran Turismo 7. The upcoming Final Fantasy 16. I heard that's a time exclusive on a PlayStation 5. Well, being a big Final Fantasy fan myself, I definitely got to pick that up. And of course, the new God of War Ragnarok game. Another great game. PlayStation 5 on the PlayStation 5. And last but not least, the latest console that I own, the Valve Steam Deck. If you haven't seen my video on the Steam Deck, I'm going to link it somewhere up there for you to check out. Okay. The Steam Deck is an absolutely magnificent system. Well, what it offers, I have to put this up into the A tier. This system is such a great, well done handheld. First of all, the most important thing about a Steam Deck to me is just feels so good in your hands. The buttons, the grip, everything about the screen is nice and clear and very large. I really enjoy the Steam Deck. The best part about this system is my entire Steam library is on the go. Now, I know you can't play every game on there from the Steam library. Some have that are not incompatible, but just the fact that you could get it all on there, it's just a huge bonus for me since I have a pretty large library on Steam. And there you have it. This is my personal console tier list. Keep in mind, all these consoles I have owned at some point in my life. I have used as some, so I'm putting these in tiers based on my own personal experience with these consoles. If you end up liking this video, please hit the like button for me. Subscribe to my new channel to help my new channel grow. Thank you, and I hope I see you in the next video.